Well, I want to say up front that I did not come up with the name for this talk. I would not name a talk. So I didn't know until the notices had gone out, and I thought, ooh, that's not going to be good. I'd never name a talk that and expect anybody to come out, but obviously it worked. So I want to say I greatly appreciate all you very smart people coming out to learn a little bit more about composites and carbon fiber. So I'm going to use composites and carbon fiber. They are not the same thing, but so you'll hear me say both terms. I see the value or the opportunity from an economic development perspective for this region to be in composites. So every time I hear somebody say, hey, it's all about carbon fiber, they don't see the whole big picture. So I want you to know that and I'll show you that carbon fiber without being in a composite isn't very useful. So we're talking about composite. So what is a composite? A definition is a good place to start. It is simply something that is made by putting several components together and creating a product that is stronger than the sum of their parts. And we'll show you several examples. Composites have been around for a long time. Back in the 1500s BC, the Egyptians were making structures and houses out of mud bricks, and they were having problems with the bricks falling apart. So they started adding straw to the bricks, and you can see somebody actually tested this. These two formulations of straw and mud were a lot stronger in compressive forces by having a composite. So the straw actually holds the mud together, and that's essentially what a composite is. So fast forward to 1200 AD, and the Mongols created a composite bow, and it was made out of wood glue with animal glue and bone, and they made a recurve composite bow. At the time, it was the most powerful weapon on the face of the planet until gunpowder was invented. We've been making plywood and particle board, an OSB strand board for years and years out of composite. We've figured out that these laminates glued together with a polymer adhesive were much stronger than a board shaped with the same dimensions cut out of a single piece of wood. So in 1936, a guy named Ray Green in Toledo, Ohio, created the first composite 16-foot sailing dinghy. He was the one that got credited with having the first one that was successful, and this started a whole downstream marine boating composites, and so boats are still made out of polyester resin today, glass fiber and polyester, and I'll show you some of that in a minute. So who's this guy?
Edison.
Who?
Edison.
Thomas Edison. So when he was working on his light bulbs, he tried thousands of different filaments for the filament for the lights, thousands of different fibers, some of which were cotton and bamboo strips that were pyrolyzed, which pyrolyzed means to ramp up very controlled atmosphere into high temperatures. And you'll see that's still used today. So the fibers that he made, the carbon fibers, weren't used. They didn't end up in the light bulb because there were other things that were better. But he created some fibers that had some very interesting properties. So fast forward to 1970. The F14 Tomcat had 2% of the materials that it was constructed out of was carbon fiber, and they made the back stabilizer fins. 2% of that aircraft for the Department of Defense was made with carbon fiber composites. So 1981, the carbon fiber monocod or driver compartment was developed and introduced in Formula One racing. John Watson actually crashed in the first race that he had that in his car. Everybody thought he had died, but he got out of the car, it was fine. Everybody was amazed. And the carbon fiber driver compartment is called one of the greatest significant contributions to safety in Formula One since its beginning. And you can see on YouTube lots of Indy cars crashing and the drivers just getting out of them because those cockpits are molded to their body and hold together. All right, fast forward to last year when the 787 Boeing Dreamliner took flight. This is an aircraft that you can see is about 50% composite. So 1970 we're at 2%. Fast forward to now, the latest aircraft are 50% composite. So why are composites important? Why are they taking off? Well, first is they are very lightweight structures. In fact, carbon fiber composites can be 5 times lighter than steel in the same dimension. So 5 times lighter than steel. They are extremely strong. This is a composite railroad trestle I-beam truss that was, and thank goodness for this guy, it's very strong because it's holding up a locomotive. So 5 times lighter than steel, 5 times stronger than steel by weight. And lastly, they don't corrode. So in another railroad, a bridge application, you can see this looks like a crack to me. I wouldn't want to be under this bridge with a locomotive on top of it. So 5 times lighter than steel, 5 times stronger than steel, and they don't corrode. So in a lot of applications, corrosion is huge. So if composites are all that and that great, why don't we make everything out of composites? It's because they're expensive. So, for example, carbon fiber that you buy is 15 to 20 and on up dollars a pound, whereas steel can be $2, and glass is even cheaper. A yard by yard square of woven carbon fiber can cost anywhere between $60 and $100. So it's still very expensive. Even at that price, though, composites and carbon fiber composites are taking off. This graph shows from Zoltec, who is a competitor to Toho, which we have in Roane County. They are forecasting a 700% increase in the amount of carbon fiber used in various applications, and we'll touch on some of those applications in a minute. In fact, last year, resin and synthetic fibers was one of the fastest growing industry sectors in the United States. And so this picture of this guy snapping this rubber band on his head, I guess if this carbon fiber for dummies, this is our dummy. So from economic development, you know, you got folks that are shutting down plants and folks that are idling projects. Composites and fiber is expanding and growing, so that's what we want to be looking at. So let's talk a little bit about carbon fiber and why it's so strong. I love this picture. Don't you love Photoshop where this guy's shadow, this rock he's holding doesn't cast a shadow? So how can they be so strong? So what you're looking at there is a one filament carbon fiber laid against a human hair. It's obviously not one of my hairs, but carbon fiber is extremely small diameter, very long, continuous filaments. Very strong and very small. So you guys help me with this. So a cord, who's ever heard this? A cord of 3 strands is not what? A cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. So if you take that and ramp it up, if 3 strands are strong, how about 3,000 or 6,000 or 12,000 or 24,000. Toho makes a 24K tow, which means there are 24,000 fibers in this bundle. So if you hear folks talk about tow, it's just a bundle of fibers, and if they say 3K, that means there's 3,000 fibers. So these fibers are then, so if you don't have a fiber in a resin, you just got the fiber, it's not very useful. It lives on a spool, like a spool of thread, and it really needs to have something done to it before it can be used in a composite. I've got examples. You can weave this stuff together, and the colors come from, this is Kevlar, and then some of the other stuff. So they make all kinds of, you can make just about anything. So they're woven together in various different combinations and also various different widths. So, and some folks are making really cool patterns. So, like I said, you've got to put carbon fiber in a resin before it's very useful. And so here is what I've got, a picture of just epoxy resin. Epoxy is a clear resin. And so the goal is to get, and I'll pass this around, the goal is to get whatever force, whether you're pulling on this composite or compressing it. If you pull it this way, you can see it's really strong because you're actually pulling on all 3,000 of those fibers at the same time. Going back to the cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. This is 3K tow, so it's each one of these weaves has 3,000 fibers in it. So you want to pull them all at the same time, so you gotta hold them still. So the resin is used to hold the fibers still. So when you're compressing them or pulling them or bending them, you're bending all however many thousands of them there are at the same time. That's where the carbon fiber composites gets their strength. All right, so this, I'm going to pass this around. This is just carbon fiber. It's been woven into a 3K tow mat, and you can see it's not very rigid or useful, or I guess you could make a blanket out of it, but not very stiff. And this is epoxy resin. So it's bendy and breakable. That was a real thin place, but well, so it will break. And it's bendy. Bendy is a scientific term for bendy. So what I've done is taken that same fiber mat that's been put together, and this is one layer of epoxy and carbon fiber, and you can see now you're starting to get a little bit rigidity. It'll still break, but try not to break it because you don't want any little pieces coming out. Don't put it in your mouth, and please don't stick yourself in the eye with it. So that's one layer. One layer. Remember I told you a yard square is $60 to $100, so you actually have to make multiple layers of this stuff before it gets to something like this that's really stiff and really starts to take on some rigid characteristics of a carbon fiber composite. And then there's the last piece that I'll pass around. This is a composite that has, it's carbon fiber, and then there's a wood laminate core inside. And I'll give you $20 if you can break this thing. It's just incredibly stiff, strong. It's almost like it pushes back on you when you push it. Extremely light, extremely strong. And again, what we're doing is combining different components, the fiber, the resin, sometimes additives, sometimes other fibers, combining them together to something that's much stronger than the sum of each of the parts. And that's it. That's all there is to it. So I like this picture because concrete is a composite also. And if you see that looks a lot like that weave that's going around. But so you put this is like the polymer matrix, just like that's in those composite pieces. And here's your reinforcement. What happens if you pour concrete and don't put the reinforcement, the fabric, the carbon fiber, or the rebar in it? drive over it and it cracks, just like the resin that I broke cracks. So the strength of the composite gets some of its strength from each of the components. So that's it. You take the carbon fiber, you take the resin, and you put it together, and you put it in a mold, and out comes a beautiful carbon fiber part. This part is one that Rick made, Rick Spears with True Design, and it is a fender for an 18-wheeler that goes over two tires. And Rick came up with a very clever way of putting this flange on there. So I hope this isn't classified. Putting this flange on there so you can take just that part off and change the tire. You don't have to take the whole fender apart. Now, Rick with True Design, who's sitting up front, can make anything that you can dream up out of carbon fiber. So there's I met a new person that's making carbon fiber parts, so you guys, we'll get you together after this. So Rick, thanks for the picture. So let's talk about, so now we know that composites have been around for a long time. We know that they're very strong, they're very light, and we know how to make them. So how is the carbon fiber itself made? So as a polymer chemist, I could spend all day on this slide. I'm not going to do that. Just suffice to say, you take a monomer, which is acrylonitrile, made from two other volatile compounds. These are gases. You start with a gas, or two gases, make acrylonitrile and link those acrylonitrile molecules just like you're linking paper clips in a long paper clip chain, if you can think about that. That's how you go from a monomer to a polymer. Just a long polymer chain. So you take those and spin them into fibers, and then you take the fibers, the pan fibers, and then oxidize them and then carbonize them. How you do that is with great big ovens. I mean, Toho in Rockwood it's like an oven farm. You crank these things up, you go through an oxidation oven, then a low temperature and high temperature carbonization oven. These things are huge. And you can see from this picture, you just don't go in the oven and come out of it. You go back and forth. So the residence time and the speed at which these things go through, it takes a long time and a lot of energy to make the carbon fiber. So pan is an expensive fiber to start with. During this process, you cook away about half of it. So you cook it back down to increase the carbon content. You try to cook all this other stuff out, and you end up with something that is an expensive starting compound. So all of these ovens have to be cranked up and ramped up to temperature. You can't just turn them on and start making carbon fiber. And then you got the long processing time, and all of that adds up to why carbon fiber is expensive now. So let's talk about what Oak Ridge National Lab is doing. So Oak Ridge had to solicit and win the proposal to have the carbon fiber technology facility here. And so they put in a submission and won that plant. And so what this is a scale-up plant for what they have been doing on a smaller line. They have a 1 ton a year line, meaning that if you ran this line, and it's not small, but if you ran this line 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you could make 1 ton. So this is going to be a 25 ton a year production capacity. So if you need to make windmill blades, you want to make a set of windmill blades and you want to try this low-cost carbon fiber, you need 5 tons of it. So you could never get it out of the 1 ton a year plant. The technology would have changed by the time you ran 5 years worth of that stuff. So this is a scale-up facility for science that's already been done on the 1 ton a year line, and that's what's very exciting and is a very important point. That building is built, there is equipment in it, and they say February 13. I think they'll be up. They're under promise and over deliver. That plant will be up running this year. And what it is a conventional conventional carbon fiber line, full of the ovens and the oxidation ovens, the low temperature and high temperature furnaces. Because the scientific method says you change one variable at a time and measure the impact that that one variable has. So this line in the pilot plant will be a conventional oven line with which they will evaluate alternate precursors. So let me see if no, we're not to the bacon yet. So they're looking at things like textile pan, which is textile grade fiber, not aerospace grade fiber. They're looking at polyolefins like polypropylene, polyethylene. Polyethylene is very inexpensive, and Dow just got a $9 million grant to work with a lab to produce carbon fiber out of polyethylene for the automotive industry. This stuff is not aerospace grade carbon fiber, and that's important to note. You know, if you're going to make airplane wings out of carbon fiber and you want me to fly on a plane, I don't care what it costs. I want the best stuff you can get at any price. But for the hood, doors, and hatch on my vehicle, I just want stronger and lighter so I can get better gas mileage. So that's what this is all about. Oh, and the other one is lignin. So the polyolefins, textile pan, and lignin. So lignin is a byproduct of the pulp and paper industry. It's either burned or it's landfilled. Its only value is its heat content. So the lab is taking lignin. The whole picture with lignin is if you can take cellulose like switchgrass or corn cobs or whatever, and break that down into the sugars that make up cellulose and ferment fuel grade alcohol, you can take the lignin and make carbon fiber to make a lighter vehicle so that fuel grade ethanol goes even farther. A more fuel efficient vehicle because it's lighter. Lignin is probably the furthest reach as far from a science standpoint, but there's a lot of work going on at the lab in lignin, and there's several partners that the lab has working on lignin to carbon fiber. The other thing, so this next line, which is not going to be installed yet, but will be next, is an alternative processing line. So if first you start with a conventional line and look at alternative precursors, then when you get that carbon fiber process set up, then you want to replace the big oven farm with an alternative alternative processing method, something that doesn't take the energy intensity and residence time that the big 3,800 degrees Fahrenheit ovens take. So let me give you an example of alternative processing. So everybody likes bacon, or I like bacon. So I pulled up this recipe for bacon and it says, crank up your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, walk away. Leave the bacon in there for 20 minutes. And in 20 minutes at 400, this is the way my dad makes bacon, and I hate it because he heats up the whole kitchen, heats the house. So you think about how much energy it takes, 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 minutes, as opposed to putting it in a microwave. So you put the same bacon in a microwave and it says what? 4 to 6 minutes. I happen to know that if you put 2 pieces of bacon in the microwave and paper towels in 2 minutes and 35 seconds, you got nice crispy bacon. 2 minutes and 30. So this, what you see here is a microwave assisted plasma line that is on the 1 ton line, not on the 25 ton scale up facility. It's on the 1 ton line. So what they're doing is scaling this piece of equipment up so it can be put in here. So, you know, while they're doing the alternative precursors on the conventional line, they're designing this microwave assisted plasma line to add to that. So then if you can use very inexpensive starting compounds, starting fibers, and then process them in a way that's a lot faster, a lot less energy, you just keep adding low impacts to lower and lower cost carbon fiber. So just to recap what the lab is doing, no funny pictures or anything. The lab is looking at alternative precursors, alternative starting materials. Like this is a pan fiber. Right now, polyacrylonitrile, Toho buys pan fibers, runs them through that big oven farm and makes carbon fibers out. It cooks half of it away. So they're looking at alternative precursors to pan. Textile pan, I mentioned, is less expensive. Polyolefin is very cheap. Lignin is basically dirt. And then alternative processing will come next, where they try to get the energy intensity out. They're also looking at alternative manufacturing methods. In Hardin Valley, behind the Manufacturing Demonstration Center, there is, behind the National Transportation Research Center, is the Manufacturing Demonstration Center, where they're looking at additive manufacturing to make, like prototype, typically has been in the past prototype parts, but adding carbon fiber to that. That's what the lab is doing. And it's all about miles per gallon. So right now, the CAFE standards for fleet-wide average, so let's take Ford for example. So from Ford's pickup truck to their Focus, all of the vehicles by 2016 have to have an average of 35 miles per gallon. So now you see they're talking about 2025 being at 54.5. So how are we going to get to 50 mile per gallon vehicles? Well, you take the weight out with something that's 5 times stronger and 5 times lighter, which is exactly what we're talking about. And now, since what the lab is doing at lowering the cost of the precursors and the processing, you get carbon fiber at a price that it can be used in the automotive industry and a lot of other industries. So now if you buy a brand new vehicle and you don't specify that you would like to enjoy the luxury of a spare tire and a jack, you will open up the spare tire container and find a can of Fix-A-Flat. Why is that? Because of weight. The weight of the tire, the weight of the jack allows Ford to say, hey, we got 3 vehicles that get 40 miles to the gallon. Just don't get a flat. So I had to work in this. This is an all composite, so you can make cars out of carbon fiber now. This is an all composite vehicle. The brakes, the wheels, the body, the interior, everything is made out of composites and mostly carbon fiber. The only problem with using aerospace grade carbon fiber, besides the fact that this is like a Lamborghini or something, it's $2.6 million. I'm not in the $2.6 million vehicle market, but it's beautiful. So I put this slide in here just to show some of the other markets that composites are getting into. We talked a little bit about vehicles. I want 50% mass reduction. As natural gas, the price point for natural gas is so attractive that now we're wanting to make vehicles out of natural gas. And so you've got to contain it and move it and ship it. So they're filament winding these gas containers. I mentioned wind blades, offshore oil, where corrosion and weight are huge deals, and strength also. And then civil infrastructure, I mentioned the bridge, but we could also add to this, you know, the guy ran in the Olympics with carbon fiber prosthesis. The applications for a lightweight, low-cost composite are limitless. So what is Innovation Valley, and what are we doing to try to capitalize on the opportunity that's at hand? Yeah. So first, last year we worked with Tom Rogers and Teresa Snow and Dan Miller at the Oak Ridge National Lab and formed the Oak Ridge Carbon Fiber Composites Consortium. This is the 14 founding members that about this time last year we've rolled this out. Didn't have any idea whether people were going to want to join it or not, but 14 folks signed up. And when we had our spring meeting earlier this year, we had over 40 members, and to include VW, Ford, GM, You can see we've got Dow, 3M. These are really, Sabic is the old GE Plastics. The eyes of the world are on this Carbon Fiber Technology Center. So all of these folks are coming at least twice a year, and every time they get to meet me again and say, hey, why don't you build your next plant here? So the Composites Consortium has been very successful, and we continue to add members. That gets the industry targets here. We've also worked extensively with Roane State in designing a workforce for the composites industry. Amtech is an entry-level manufacturing skills with a composites capstone course. Mike Farmer's ACE Jobs Accelerator is designing 3 classes to put at the end of a general technology degree to increase students' competencies with composites. And then the STEM certification class is designed to be a nationally recognized program that students can go take the classes, and then everybody will agree that they have the skills in the composites that's needed to used in the workforce. We've designed a composites lab that's something that I think everybody's going to be proud of. The students are going to be well served with, and it's going to be an excellent tool for us to show industry that these are the students that are going through these classes are working on the actual equipment that's used in industry. And we've had a lot of fun doing that. Spent a lot of time doing it, but had a lot of fun. So from an economic development standpoint, so I work for Innovation Valley, which I report through Kim Denton with the Oak Ridge Economic Partnership. So what we've done is taken the carbon fiber and composite supply chain and broken it down. Here's the precursor or the pan fiber producers. Here's the folks that make carbon fiber. Then, as I said, you got to take and weave it or knit it or braid it. Here's the resin that you've got to combine the two. This is kind of an, you can chop the fiber and put it in injection molding resin like they do at the plant in Clinton. What's the name of that plant? Techmer in Clinton. They take chopped carbon fiber and put it in a plastic resin so people can injection mold parts out of it. And then here's where the bulk of the folks like Rick live. People that mold, resin infuse, hand layup, pultrusion, filament winders, all the people that make all the different parts for all the different applications. We know who all these folks are, or not all of them. We know a lot of them in each one of these sectors and are calling them, visiting them. I met with the president of a company, a Japanese company last week, who's got a project that could employ up to 150 folks, and we want all of those projects here. So not only do we know who the folks are, we know who our targets are in each of the different sectors. We've gone to the liberty of designing plants. So this is Lot 5 at Horizon Center. And Barge Wagner has helped us draw what a 2-building carbon fiber plant would look like on that space. So not only do we say, hey, we've got land, and we work with Jack to make sure there's enough electricity. A lot of folks have put a lot of effort into making sure that we have sites that are ready and infrastructure that can support their needs. The next slide, and I'm winding down. Rick, Chin, and Russ helped us with, there's the Carbon Fiber Technology Center, and there's 10 or so acres out front of it that we could build separate facilities or one big facility. But again, we're showing that we've got sites that are ready for these companies, and we're going after them. Basically the last slide. This stuff is happening right now. We have the game-changing technology in low-cost carbon fiber coming down the pike. We are developing the workforce to support the economic development recruits that we are hammering out every day. And you can see, this came out today. Kathy sent this. DOE selects $21.75 million in funding to develop what? Stronger, lighter materials for cars and trucks. So this is happening right now. I'm thrilled to be a polymer chemist doing economic development with all this stuff going on. It's too good to be true.